The morning air was crisp as Jake Miller's truck rumbled down the winding country road that led to his family's land. 2 years abroad felt like a lifetime, and the thought of finally seeing home again had been the fuel that got him through every long, sleepless night overseas. He'd worked in construction projects across Europe, saving every penny to restart his late father's farmhouse and maybe start a small business of his own. He could already imagine the scent of pine, the creak of the porch steps, and the quiet stillness of the fields that stretched for miles. But as he rounded the last bend, Jake's smile began to fade. The fields weren't fields anymore. His foot eased off the gas pedal, the truck slowing as his brain struggled to make sense of what his eyes were seeing. His 40 acres of open countryside was gone. In its place were rows of shiny, freshly built suburban houses. Every inch of green was buried under concrete driveways, vinyl siding, and fake lawns that gleamed an unnatural shade of green. Jake stopped the truck in the middle of the road and stepped out. A crisp sign towered over a freshly paved entrance. "Welcome to Willow Springs, a Whitmore HO community." Below the name, a smiling logo of a White House wrapped in ivy mocked him. His pulse quickened as he walked forward, the crunch of gravel beneath his boots echoing in the eerie quiet. He scanned the horizon, trying to spot something familiar. A tree, a fence post, anything that once belonged to him. But everything was gone. His father's old oak tree, the one he'd carved his initials into as a boy, had been chopped down. The barn he and his dad rebuilt one summer after a storm, replaced by a cul-de-sac with a fountain shaped like a swan. Jake's throat tightened. He'd only been gone 2 years. 2 years, and someone had stolen an entire world. A woman's voice cut through the stillness. "Excuse me." Jake turned to see a woman marching toward him from one of the houses. She was in her late 40s, blonde hair pinned tight, wearing a pink tracksuit and oversized sunglasses. A clipboard was tucked under one arm, and the look on her face screamed authority. "Can I help you?" she demanded, stopping just short of him. "You're parked on private property. Residents only pass this point." Jake blinked, too stunned to answer at first. "Private property. This is my property." Your eyebrows shot up. "Yes, ma'am," he said, trying to steady his voice. "The Miller land. My family's owned this place for over 70 years. He pointed down the road. "There used to be a farmhouse right over there." The woman let out a laugh that was more of a scoff. "Oh, that old shack. We had that torn down ages ago. Dangerous structure." Completely, Jake stared at her, trying to process her words. "Torn down? You tore down my house." As she folded her arms, her tone clipped. "Sir, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. This community is part of Willow Springs, managed under the Whitmore Homeowners Association." She tapped her clipboard. "I'm Karen Whitmore, HOA president." Jake let the name roll around in his mind. He'd heard stories about people like her, power-hungry HOA leaders who treated this beyond belief. "Listen, Miss," was beyond belief. "Listen, Mrs. Whitmore," he said, taking a step closer. "I never sold this land. I didn't lease it, donate it, or hand it over. This," he swept his hand toward the rows of identical homes. "This was all mine." Karen adjusted her sunglasses and sighed dramatically. "We looked into ownership before development. The records were unclear. Some kind of lapse in registration, I believe. The land was marked as abandoned, so we filed for community use and redevelopment rights. Everything's been perfectly legal." Jake's jaw tightened. "Abandoned. I was overseas working. The property taxes were paid in full. I even had a caretaker come by every few months." "Well," she said sweetly, "your caretaker didn't do a very good job. It was an eyesore. We've created something much more valuable here. Affordable housing, green spaces, and a community with standards." He stared at her clipboard, and that's when he saw a corner of an old survey map peeking from under the pages. His name, Miller, was still faintly visible in faded ink near the edge of the property line. His stomach dropped. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. She followed his gaze and quickly flipped the page over. "That's none of your concern." Jake took a deep breath, trying to hold back the fury bubbling inside him. "You built eight houses on my land without a single word to me." Karen smirked. 89, actually. Mine was the first." She gestured toward a large 2-story house at the end of the block with white shutters and a perfect lawn. "We've built a thriving neighborhood here, Mr. Miller. You should be thanking us for raising your land's value." "Raising its values," repeated, almost laughing. "You stole it." Her expression hardened. "Watch your tone. I don't appreciate being accused of theft. If you have an issue, you can contact our legal department. But I'll warn you, our lawyers don't take kindly to frivolous claims." Jake closer until only a few feet separated them. His voice was calm but cold. "This isn't a claim. It's a fact, and I'll be seeing your lawyers real soon." Karen crossed her arms, still defiant. "You do that. But I suggest you leave before I call security. We have neighborhood rules about trespassing." He gave her one last look. memorizing the arrogance on a face, the clipboard in her hand, the sea of homes behind her. "You don't have security," he said softly. "You have fences on my soil." As he turned and walked back to his truck, a couple of residents peeked out from their driveways, curious. Jake caught their whispers. "Who's that guy?" "Karen's dealing with another complainer. Probably one of those anti-HOA people." He climbed into the truck, started the engine, and stared out at the place that used to be his. The morning sun glinted off the roofs of the stolen houses, reflecting in his windshield like a cruel joke. His home, his history, and his inheritance, all erased and replaced by someone else's vision of control. Jake didn't drive away immediately. He sat there for a long minute, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding. Then, slowly, a calm resolve spread across his face. He reached into the glove compartment, pulled out a worn leather folder, and flipped it open. Inside were copies of his property deed, the last tax receipt, and the official map it signed when he passed the land down. He smiled faintly. "Let's see how legal you really are, Karen." The truck's tires kicked up dust as he drove off toward town, the Willow Springs sign shrinking in his rearview mirror. The sun had fully risen now, casting long shadows over the new houses. Shadows that seemed to stretch like cracks through their perfect white fences. Jake knew what came next wouldn't be easy. But one thing was certain: the land might be covered in cement and paint, but the deed was still his. And soon, the whole town would know it too. The county courthouse was packed to capacity, the air thick with curiosity and tension. It wasn't every day that an entire homeowners association was dragged into court for allegedly building 88 houses on someone else's property. Reporters filled the front benches, their cameras flashing whenever the doors opened. HOA residents whispered among themselves, uncertain whether they should side with their president or prepare for disaster. Jake Miller sat quietly at his table, his expression calm but unreadable. He wore a simple suit, no tie. He didn't need theatrics. The truth was enough. His lawyer, a sharp silver-haired man named Daniel Reeves, sorted through stacks of documents with methodical precision. On the other side of the room, Karen Whitmore entered like she owned the place. Her heels clicked on the polished floor, her pearl necklace gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Behind her followed her board members, each looking far less confident than their leader. Karen smiled at the reporters, offering a rehearsed wave as if she were arriving at a charity gala instead of a property theft hearing. When she saw Jake, her expression tightened for just a second before the mask of superiority returned. "Mr. Miller," she said as she passed him, "I hope this little misunderstanding hasn't been too stressful for you." Jake looked up at her evenly. "I'm sure it'll be more stressful for you before the day's done." Karen's smirk faltered. The judge entered, and the courtroom rose. Judge Morales was known for her no-nonsense demeanor, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and little patience for arrogance. When she took her seat, the room fell silent. "Court is now in session," the bailiff announced. Karen's attorney, a young corporate type with slick back hair and an expensive suit, stood first. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Whitmore, and the Willow Springs Homeowners Association maintain that their development was fully authorized under municipal guidelines. The land in question was abandoned, unclaimed, unused, and neglected. My client merely took initiative to improve the community." Jake's lawyer rose immediately after. "Your Honor," he began, his voice measured but firm, "that statement is categorically false. My client, Mr. Miller, never abandoned his property. He has maintained ownership through tax payments, official registration, and continued correspondence with the county. What Mrs. Whitmore did was not an act of civic improvement. It was an act of deliberate theft during fraud." Karen leaned toward her lawyer, whispering something sharp. Her confidence was she tried to hide it. Judge Morales nodded. "Let's see the evidence," she said. Daniel Reeves stepped forward, placing a thick binder on the judge's bench. "Here we have the original deed to the Miller property, recorded in 1978, transferred from John Miller to his son Jacob Miller in 2012. We have consistent tax records showing payments through 2024. And we have aerial photographs from before and after the development, clearly showing that the Willow Springs subdivision sits entirely within the Miller boundary lines." He pressed a button on a remote, and a projector lit up the wall. The first image appeared: Jake's land as it was 2 years ago, acres of rolling hills, trees, and the old farmhouse. The next image showed the same coordinates today, buried under houses and cul-de-sacs. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Karen's attorney quickly stood. "Your Honor, there must be some confusion with the mapping." Come off smoothly. "There's no confusion. The county's GIS system confirms it. Every single house in Willow Springs sits on Mr. Miller's land." Judge Morales leaned back in her chair. "Mrs. Whitmore, is this true?" Her composure cracking slightly. "Your Honor, we had permission from the city to develop unused land. The property was listed as inactive. We followed all the legal Mrs. Whitmore. The judge interrupted. Did you not verify the rightful owner of the land before breaking ground? Karen hesitated. We assumed. Assumed. The judge's tone hardened. You assumed you could demolish a man's home and build 88 properties without checking who owned it. Karen's voice grew high-pitched. We improved the community. We increased property values, brought in new families. This was progress. Jake's lawyer repeated, rising again. You bulldozed a private citizen's home, sold his soil to strangers, and pocketed the profits. That's not progress. That's greed. The gallery murmured, and even some of Karen's own board members avoided her eyes. Jake remained still, watching her unravel. His anger had cooled long ago. What was left was something colder, sharper. He'd been quiet through most of the proceedings, but now he spoke. Your Honor, may I? The judge nodded. Jake stood, facing the courtroom. Grew up on that land, he said. My dad built our farmhouse with his own hands. Every tree, every fence post, every corner of that property meant something to my family. When I left the country for work, I thought it would be waiting when I came back. Instead, I found strangers living where my kitchen used to be. And a woman telling me it was hers now. I paid my taxes. I kept my deed. I didn't abandon anything. But she's voice didn't waver. The silence that followed was heavy. Karen's attorney tried to regain ground. Your Honor, surely there must be room for a settlement. Perhaps compensation for Mr. Miller, within reason. Judge Morales raised a hand. Enough. She looked directly at Karen. Suze Whitmore, I've seen a lot of arrogance in this courtroom, but this is exceptional. You built an entire subdivision on private property without verifying ownership. You destroyed a man's home and sold off parcels of land that were never yours to sell. Karen's lips trembled. I didn't know. The judge's gavel came down hard. Ignorance is not an excuse for fraud. I am ordering immediate transfer of all property built within the Miller boundaries to Mr. Miller. Furthermore, restitution for damages and unlawful profit will be determined in a separate hearing. Mrs. Whitmore, you and your association are hereby liable for trespassing, unlawful development, and destruction. Of the gavel echoed like a gunshot. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the weight of the ruling sank in. Karen's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Then you can't do this to me. I built this community. I built everything here. Jake looked at her, his voice steady. No, Karen. You built it on lies. On my land. And now it's mine again. Her screams followed him as he gathered his papers and walked out of the courtroom. Outside the sun was bright, the air warm against his face. For the first time in years, he felt the kind of peace his father used to talk about. Quiet and deep, the kind that came from knowing you the right thing and won. Reporters rushed up, shouting questions, cameras flashing, but Jake didn't stop. He just smiled faintly as he got into his truck. In the reflection of the courthouse windows, he caught one last glimpse of Karen arguing with her lawyer, her empire crumbling in real time. As the truck pulled away, Jake looked toward the horizon. The houses of Willow Springs stood there in neat rows. Still on his land, but now what he'd do with them, sell them, hear them, tear them down, or rebuild something better. But he knew one thing for sure. This time, no one would ever take it from him again.